Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. Jazakallah so much for staying with us. We've seen elections after elections happening over the last few months across the globe. And one of the biggest, of course, was in the United Kingdom. That as Keir Starmer took his position as the new head of state within that part of the world. And he and President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed interest in the two countries working together as they usher in new administrations. In a statement yesterday, presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya said Starmer called Ramaphosa to express his interest in working closely with South Africa following the Labour Party's landslide election win, which ended 14 years of conservative rule. Now, how will Starmer fare as he takes up one of the most powerful positions in world politics remains to be seen. Joining me now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Hany, who is from the University of Glasgow. Dr. Beshr, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran so much for joining us here on News in Focus at Hilaal TV.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're most welcome. Thank you very much for having me today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Beshr, well, 14 years of conservative rule, one would have believed that, some are saying that Rishi Sunak was potentially the final nail in the coffin with regards to their long rule within the United Kingdom. How was the Labour Party under Stamer able to, really convince voters within the United Kingdom that change was really necessary?
Voters of United Kingdoms already fed up a few years ago. Even the last election, Labour should have taken it. However, during and because of some, between quotations, as the Guardian put it, a sort of conspiracy inside the Labour Party that prevented the party coming into power. Because of Jeremy Corbyn, a far-left leader, he was on top of the party at that moment. This means that he would have come like a prime minister at that time. So now I think the land is already paved the way for Labour for many reasons. Firstly, voters realize now the real consequences of the Brexit. They suffer economically. All the rosy promises of conservatives and the Brexit leaders didn't really exist at all. On the foreign policy, Gaza war came as a sort of a big challenge where this previous conservative weak government didn't really manage to handle it. In the last few years, we managed how many conservative leaders came to power. 3 or 4 leaders came to power. This means it was unstable leader. So there was a sort of hope that there is any sort of a change. It doesn't mean that the Labour Party is very strong, is providing any sort of good alternatives for voter, but it's just anything apart from the Conservatives. We can call it as a sort of punishment vote for Conservatives. We have seen so many seats that used to be safe seats for Conservatives across the UK. They've been taken out to Labour.
Yeah, Dr. Beshr, I want to touch on the domestic issues within Great Britain because obviously, Brexit, you've mentioned it quite well that you could see the actual effects that are happening there, but also the Russia and Ukraine conflict, the fact that supposed suspension of ties with Russia, the boycott of Russia, which led to higher energy prices within the United Kingdom. And the citizens there were feeling it, weren't they, that all of this made by the decisions of the Conservative Party was really coming to haunt them?
Definitely. However, it's all part of economic package and economic promise of conservatives. Economic package and the promise for conservatives, they will rely heavily behind Europe, blaming European Union for all the problems, promising that if we just get out of the European Union, everything will be okay. What happened is the opposite. Now, the energy bill, that's one of the big factors is the Russian-Ukrainian war that jumped the price up to the sky, and also the economic situation, the inflation. We have seen even some unexpected consequences of the Brexit, where actually 1 or 2 years ago, where the lorry drivers where there were a sort of shortage of lorry drivers to be able just to deliver the petrol to the petrol stations, where actually the governments, conservative governments at that time, they were forced to, which actually something quite surprisingly, a new visa for European drivers just to come in for the UK for 6 months or so with a big high salary just to come and to drive lorries. And even they didn't manage to solve this problem in a proper way. So all in all, the economic situation, of course, it was the major issue for the outrage of the British voters against conservatives. However, it's not just like any country, because there are lots of consequences of the decisions taken by the conservatives in the last 14 years. The voters gave the conservatives a chance by another chance, an election after another election. However, the party didn't really manage to solve it. To be honest as well, it was part of a wider international issue at that time. Trump was in power. Boris Johnson was just promising a new idea. He was trying to play the game that Tony Blair played before when he came to power, offering a sort of something revolutionary in the Labour Party, getting with the George W. Bush, promising with a new source of economy, which is against the Labour Party, and then he did a sort of a big victory in politics. Boris Johnson tried to do so with Trump. However, there was a big difference between the era of Boris Johnson and the era of Tony Blair. Trump went away directly with lots of scandals. Boris Johnson didn't manage to fix the relationship with Europe. There was a sort of outrage, and all had economic consequences that reflected into the problems that the people and the normal people are suffering from day-to-day life.
Dr. Beshr, earlier on, I read a statement from Keir Starmer, and let me quote it. He's saying that there needs to be a clear and concise ceasefire in Gaza. And this is a surprising, and maybe you can talk to this, where he says the Palestinian state has every right to be self-determined and self-fulfilled. We did not hear those statements from his predecessor, of course, Rishi Sunak. It even came to a point where Rishi Sunak had publicly at some stage said that he would support what Israel is doing right now in Gaza. Just your take on it, because, I mean, if he ever wanted to make quite a massive impact, he's made that right now with those statements, hasn't he?
The thing is, let's put it on how Starmer did to say this statement. If we look back a few months ago, Starmer was under so much pressure from the Labour Party leaders and politicians, including councillors and MPs, in order to call for ceasefire. And he actually opposed it, and he resisted it for months until he started losing his supporters, even losing councillors across the country, elected councillors. MPs, they were so outraged against him, so he was really forced to do so. And this is a very good, actually, for the Palestinians and for the Arab cause in the UK in general, because this shows it's not just a statement. It's there is a sort of people power, politician pressure from the Labour Party, street pressure from Muslim voters, even before the election, in order just to push the British government in order to take action. Of course, above that, the miserable situation in Gaza that affected all people worldwide, and we've seen demonstrations in the British streets and across British universities that we haven't experienced before, maybe even since the Iraq War 20 years ago, and even before that. So all of this puts lots of pressures on Starmer in order to say so. So when we speculate about what action Britain can take, it's 100% going to be different than the conservatives. Not because they like it, not because they think that they changed their strategies towards Israel or supporting Israel, but because of the pressures that they have, and because of the mandate of voters, and they keep monitoring it in order to push to do something. If you can also remember the first statement of the foreign secretary, it was about calling for ceasefire and working with the United States in order to find a quick decision of ceasefire. This I wouldn't call shift in the strategy, but shift in tactics and the politics of the UK. This is an outcome of the people who went into the streets. This is the outcome of what's going on in Gaza. This is the outcome of the Israeli aggression. So I think there is going to be, even if it's a small politics or small changes in British politics, this is going to be have an impact, especially in this critical time where there is so much talk about the negotiations, and we've been now in 9 months of the war in Gaza. So I expected that the UK is going to be forced to take different decisions, other than or even in the opposite direction of the Rishi Sunak has taken in the last year.
I've got just 1 minute, Dr. Beshr. I want to slot this in. South Africa, the United Kingdom. I mean, of course, when our democracy came in, late Nelson Mandela and Queen Elizabeth II had a very good relationship. The relationships between the heads of state have been topsy-turvy, especially when Tony Blair was the prime minister, and there was, of course, the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan when we had Thabo Mbeki as the president here in South Africa. For the South African viewers that are watching, what can they expect? Because it's quite clear Stamer wants to develop relationships with President Cyril Ramaphosa. In 1 minute, Dr. Beshr.
I'm not really an expert in British South African relationship. However, taking into consideration the tendencies and the politics of the Labour Party, it's a completely different, even in the foreign policy. Traditionally, conservatives are more related to United States. Anything that they don't have a good record in human rights or supporting South or the relationship with Africa. So I would expect that the relationship with any sort of African countries, including South Africa, with all the movement that South Africa is taking now for the Palestinian cause, it would be much better under Labour government.
Yeah, interesting to see how that's going to be. Keir Starmer, of course, making it clear he wants to sit down with President Cyril Ramaphosa and strengthen relations between the two countries. Dr. Beshr, shukran so much for joining us. We hope to have you again on our channel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You're most welcome. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
That's Dr. Hany Beshr from the University of Glasgow. Yeah, of course, interesting times coming out of Europe. Interesting time what's happening in France with regards to the political situation that is happening there. At one stage it was the right, it's now gone to the left. How will Europe follow in terms of that? After the break, I'll have more for you on News in Focus. Do stay tuned.